Good afternoon, everyone. We are so glad you're here. Other folks are going to be joining us in the next few minutes. I hope you are well, and I hope you're doing well, and I hope all your loved ones are too on this kind of rainy, cooler spring day here in Atlanta. It's good to see your faces. If you're joining us as an attendee, please remember to mute out so that we won't pick up any of your background noise, the barking dog or the occasional upset child that we might run into, or just you if you decide to have a meltdown. We're really glad you're here. We and you have been looking forward to this Zoom at Noon, which is one of a series that's been going on in this COVID year, just as a way to keep up with each other and keep current and figure out what's going on in the law, and today, how best we can take care of ourselves as lawyers. We have three really remarkable and frankly, wonderful panelists. They're just great human beings. Dr. Lisa Boswell, Jessica Eames, and Bob Rubin. I'll introduce them all in a minute. I've known them for a while, and they're just great people. So not only are you getting great stuff today, and please, if you're like me, find your pen and your Post-it notes so you can write a couple of things down, because even though it seems obvious sometimes, these are the things that are hard to remember in life as we go through and ride the rails of life. Lisa is a psychiatrist in private practice here in Atlanta. She's a graduate of UVA School of Medicine and did her residency at Emory Law. And many of you may know her husband, who's an attorney who practices at King and Spalding. Jessica did practice at King and Spalding for many years, and you can talk about that, Jessica, I'm sure we want to hear, and is now a licensed therapist in private practice here in the Atlanta area. She's a graduate of Vassar, Emory Law, and Georgia State. And many of you already know Bob Rubin as well, who is one of the top criminal defense attorneys, not only in Georgia, but in the country. And he's a partner at Peters, Rubin, Sheffield, and Hodges. Bob is a fellow of the American College of Trial Lawyers, no small feat in a career, and the American Board of Criminal Lawyers. And I think you're a double graduate, right, Bob, of Emory undergrad and Emory College and Emory Law. We are so happy to have you all. Folks will continue to join a bit because lawyers can only be on time when there's a court hearing. But please take it from here.
Thank you, Craig. Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Looking forward to having a bit of a discussion with you all at the end of this, if we have some time. You may have noticed that on this panel about wellness and resiliency, there are two very qualified, very esteemed mental health professionals, and then there's me. I am just a lawyer. I am not an expert in wellness by any stretch of the imagination. I am pretty sure I'm on this panel to show you what not to do. I'm kind of the before picture and the before and after that we're all used to. The truth is, all of us who practice law deal with an inordinate amount of stress. As a criminal defense lawyer, stress and anxiety are my most frequent co-counsel when I'm on trial. I inevitably lose sleep when I'm preparing for trial. I don't sleep well. I ruminate. I think about what I should be doing, what more I could be doing. What if I don't do it well? What if I don't perform the way I want to perform for the jury? It's just a never-ending loop in my head, even after 35 years of practicing law. So obviously I'm doing a lot wrong. And Jessica and Lisa will show us how to do it right. So why am I on this this panel. In 2013, a friend of mine, someone I had tried cases with, unbeknownst to me, had a mental illness and committed suicide in the State Bar parking lot. A few months later, another lawyer friend of mine, also an excellent lawyer, asked me to represent him before the State Bar because he had failed to properly inform his client about court dates and some other things, and essentially had a career meltdown. And this is a guy who was a super lawyer, so to speak. It struck me that at that time, 25 years of practicing law and being a member of the Georgia Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers for 25 years, I couldn't recall a single seminar or even a part of a seminar that dealt with our issues as lawyers, as human beings, about stress, anxiety, depression, alcoholism. Not one single program or an hour of a longer program was put on to address our own wellness. And I thought that was crazy, no pun intended. So I actually ended up getting together with Jessica, and in 2014 at a GACTL seminar, Georgia Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, we put on an hour of just talking about the problems lawyers have at a higher rate than other professions and other people. And Jessica, of course, addressed some of the things we could do about it to help ourselves. The response from that 1 hour was something unlike anything I had seen. And I had spoken a good number of times before that audience. Never got the feedback I got for that one seminar about wellness. And so GACTL decided as a group to do something about wellness every year, if not multiple times a year, to help our own association members with the issues that we as lawyers deal with. It's something we're all still learning about. Certainly, we know a lot more now than we did in 2013, 2014 when we first spoke. I am not a mental health professional, but I did do some research in preparation for that first talk now 6-7 years ago. And in the ensuing years, when I've been asked to speak on other panels or things about the wellness, I want to share with you some of the things and just kind of set the stage for what Jessica and Lisa will be talking about. So give me 1 second. I'm going to share my screen. Hope I do it right. And show you a few slides on my, where did it go? There it is. So this is some of the depressing statistics that I found in just Googling lawyers and wellness issues. We are 4th in suicide rate, behind, and you could probably guess just from urban myth, dentists are number 1. And to my surprise, pharmacists and doctors are 2 and 3. And we're right behind them at number 4 in suicide rate. It's the 3rd leading cause of death for lawyers after cancer and heart disease. Lawyer suicide rates are up to 6 times as high as the general population, which is astounding to me. And this is another astounding statistic. 1 in 10 lawyers think about suicide at least once a month. We as a profession are 3 times more likely to suffer from depression and other symptoms than the general population. Wellness way back in 2013, and of course we've never stopped. In 2013, an organization called Career Bliss did a survey of the happiest and unhappiest professions. An associate at a law firm was the number 1 unhappiest job in America in 2013. We're doing better. In 2019, we weren't in the top 10. I think we were 19th from when I last looked. So hopefully something is changing in law firms and law firm culture over the last 6-7 years that has changed that statistic. These are some of the reasons that lawyering is so stressful and so anxiety producing and causes such angst. Of course, it's adversarial in nature. I am not an adversarial person. I think as I get older, maybe I'm more adversarial, like my parents. I'm turning into my parents, but I'm not necessarily an adversarial person. And yet that's part of my job, is to confront opposing counsel and argue and argue and argue. And that's just not comfortable for me. And I think that produces anxiety in me. Of course, everyone we deal with, from opposing counsel to judges to clients, and certainly in the criminal defense world, our own clients are a big source of stress. We're perfectionists. We don't stop till the job is done. And that means long hours. It means doing things 3, 4, 5 times over and over again. We work hard at our craft, and that can create a chronic feeling that nothing is good enough. This surprised me. Lawyers are considered pessimists because, of course, we prepare for the worst case scenario. We have to anticipate the worst. We are skeptical of what people tell us, our own clients, our opposing counsel, of course, and pessimism leads to stress and disillusionment, and that makes us vulnerable to depression. This is something that Jessica taught me way back when we first spoke about how hard it is to transition from our lawyer mode to our husband or wife or significant other mode. The characteristics that make us good lawyers often, including compartmentalizing problems, including kind of turning off and looking at problems objectively. Those are hard to turn off at 5 o'clock when we go home to our significant other and assume that second role. And it is something that I continually think about when I am not being a good husband or not doing a good job as a father. And I try to get out of lawyer mode and into human being mode, which is hard to do. Of course, associates who have to work long hours to bill and hopefully making partner, there's all that pressure to make money. For me, it's amazing. I've made a good living for this, and yet if a bad month goes by, no clients walk in the door, man, that switch. My God, is anybody ever going to hire me again? It's really strange that is a significant factor still in my thinking in life. So of course, that's the downside of practicing law. There's a good side, and I want us all to think about the good stuff before we leave here today. And the reasons we did this, we offer a unique skill to people. We help people who need help. Many of us, not all of us, but many lawyers are called to a higher purpose. I think of all those lawyers who are working during the pandemic, helping tenants to keep from getting it, and helping other people who really were tragically hit by the pandemic. There's a higher purpose to our work often. Of course, we protect people. I take great satisfaction in thinking about standing between the prosecutor and the client. They're going to have to go through me before they get to my client. The work is always intellectually stimulating, no matter what kind of law you practice, and that's a good thing. And we can do this till we're ancient, as long as our minds are still working. Of course, the best lawyers are the creative lawyers. So the more creative you can be, the better you're going to be, and the better it feels. It feels really good when you solve a problem that no one else seems to be able to solve in your firm. I'm competitive by nature. I like to compete. I like sports. I like to win, which can be both a blessing and a curse, because if I don't win, I take it hard. I don't have that short memory that you kind of need as a lawyer. And of course, we have the opportunity to make a good living. And as a friend of mine once said, it beats digging ditches. And so those are the good things, the reasons we like practicing law, in addition to some of the rougher things. What we tried to do way back in 2013 and forward is talk about this, talk about all these depressing statistics and try to figure out why it's so. Why are lawyers having such a difficult time with drugs, with alcohol, with depression, with high suicide rate and all the other symptoms, and then name it. I think Jessica and Lisa will talk about it more, but just talking about it helps. We realize we're not alone out there. We have people who care about us in the profession, in addition to our family members and friends. Certainly, if we see a lawyer with a problem or symptoms of a problem, we need to be proactive. We need to address it. We need to help them step up and get the help they need. This was really surprising to me. A professor at the University of Washington in St. Louis did a study and found that 10% first year people were depressed, but by third year, 40% showed signs of depression. And that's just the beginning of what they deal with in their profession. So it's real, it's specific to our profession in a way that it's not in the general population. And that's the before picture. I'm going to turn it over to Lisa to help us with the after picture and what we can do about it. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides.
Great, thank you, Bob. And I'm gonna, God willing, I'm gonna get my share screen up and let's see if I can get this to work. Right, can you all see that now? Is that working? Super. Great. And again, I'm Dr. Lisa Boswell. I'm so glad to be here. I think this is just so important that we open this up for a conversation about something we've all heard about, but we don't take enough time to think about. I think everything I say you've probably heard before, but what I hope I can do today is frame this in some new ways with some new thinking. And I'm going to present about 8 hours worth of material in about 10 minutes. So you all just sort of listen to this as an overview. And if anybody wants more information, we can talk later about specifics on this. And my thoughts come from some work I did over the summer with the Harvard Mind Body Institute. And they're doing just this amazing research on the biology of stress and a lot of the pathways of stress-mediated illness that's just groundbreaking. So again, everything I say to you, you've probably heard before, but I want you to think about it in some new ways. Let's see if I can. Great. So this is a way to conceptualize just your health through the Harvard Mind Body Institute. So a three-legged stool with one leg being sort of traditional medicine or pharmaceuticals, go to the doctor, get a medication. Obviously surgical problems have a surgical solution, but the third leg of the stool is self-care. And this is the part I want you to really look at and think about. When we talk about resiliency, what are we talking about? We're really talking about the ability to come back from adversity and the ability to maintain physiological allostasis in the face of mental and physical challenges. one way to conceptualize stress is, there's good stress, there's tolerable stress, and then we can get into toxic stress. And toxic stress is when we get sick. And I think we all have a sense for ourselves. When are you getting into that? Maybe you're not sleeping, maybe you lose your appetite. Obviously, with symptoms of depression, panic, high blood pressure, you're in the realm of toxic stress. So I want us to all think about, for you, where is your line for that? And so this is really frames the conversation, the rest of our conversation today. And this is from the Harvard Mind Body Institute. If we think about stress, and one of their terms for this is our allostatic load. This is really what we bring at any point in terms of what's going on currently and what we bring from childhood, adult life. So we come in with this allostatic load literally on our bodies. And we can't necessarily change that. Some people have had very stressful childhood experiences. You had no control over. You as lawyers don't have control over what happens a lot of times in your work. I mean, you take on a case and who knows what will happen. That's one of the hard things about being a law. I know that from being married to a lawyer. So stress is what it is, but we can hold stress with these resiliency factors. And we have a lot of data on this. I'm not just creating this because it's a good idea. We actually have science behind this. If you think about your brain, the stress response is part of that primitive part of the brain that we share with even on a cellular level, which is what a lot of this work is about. So we can be in stress mode and we can be in the anti-stress mode, which is what they talk about in the relaxation response. So that's a counter to stress. And I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about what that is and how you can invoke that as part of your resiliency base. Mindfulness is in the same sort of category as the relaxation response. Jessica is going to talk about the importance of social support, relationship health. That's incredibly important for resiliency. I'm going to talk a little bit about some cognitive skills and positive psychology and how that takes us out of the stress response into the relaxation response. Spirituality puts us there. I define that broadly. That could be your garden. That could be a religious tradition. It could be yoga. It could be nature, all sorts of, or art or poetry. But really important to remind ourselves of that part of ourselves. I think you as lawyers know about the importance of exercise and nutrition. So I'm not going to talk about that as much, but really important. And I'm going to talk a little bit about habits, particularly around alcohol today, because that's also part of health. So think about this equation. Your stress is what it is. That's the numerator. The resiliency factors is the denominator that we can do something about. And that sort of equation equates into vulnerability to illness. Some of you have very little vulnerability to illness. Great. I'm really glad. Many of us have vulnerability to illness, including heart disease, cancer, all sorts of things. So let's talk a little bit about this concept of the relaxation response. And remember, we're going from stress response, which takes us into this illness, into counter stress response. That's why we do it. That's why it's important. One thing I love about this is this concept is present in all wisdom traditions across the earth. So there's a reason we have developed this as human beings, because it's important. The relaxation response helps us break the train of everyday thought. And it actually has, when people study this, it has all this physiological benefit: lowered oxygen consumption, lowered heart rate, lowered respiratory rate, which ends up having all these tremendous health benefits. And these are just, some of the ways around the earth that people utilize this. I'm going to share with you just the very basics of it, but people do this in all kinds of ways. And so what is the relaxation response? It's the repetition of a word, a sound, a prayer, a thought, a phrase, or even a muscular activity. And you go from all of your thoughts that you're having to return to the word, sound, or image. This really builds on some parallels are the work at Emory in the compassion-based mindfulness center, where they've done all this wonderful work with the Dalai Lama. And what they utilize is an image of nurture that is very powerful. So I use that a lot in my practice. If you just think through your life, you know, what was a place or a person, a place in nature that brings up the connotations of nurture for you. And you can do this for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It would be great if you could do this throughout the day. A lot of times I'll just do this if I'm waiting on hold on the phone or even at a traffic light or something. So, and the reason we do it is we're going from stress brain to anti-stress brain. So I would invite you just for a few seconds to bring to mind an image or a thought or word. It could be your grandmother's kitchen table. For me, it's usually something from nature. And just bring it to mind. And if we had more time, I would give this a little bit more time, but that's what this is. And so I want you to remember, if you go back to that image and you're in the middle of stress that you don't necessarily have control over, we can control our brains in this way and evoke the relaxation response. So it's a tool, and we actually have data on this. One reason at the Mind Body Institute, they're following a lot of the research on the immune pathways of stress. How does stress get sort of translated into illness? And I'm not going to spend too much time because we don't have enough time, but it's pretty fascinating. And it also is fascinating, the links between stress and immune system as it relates to COVID right now. There's a lot of links in this. So we're going to have a lot more information that comes out of this. But literally, we can translate in our cells stress into illness through these pathways. So there's a reason all this is important. And this is just a slide on how if you compare oxygen consumption during the relaxation response versus sleep, relaxation response is actually more impressive. So it's good stuff. You know, stress can translate into a lot of these diseases. Bob talked about those. Hypertension, obesity are also parts of this illness. Diabetes, chronic pain and headache, and even some forms of dementia, HIV to AIDS progression. So it's probably mediated through these cellular networks. I want to talk a little bit about sleep hygiene. I think most people know about that, but I'll just remind you in the ideal, and if you're going to take one thing in your health that drives your health, it's probably quality of sleep, honestly. And we all know that in our bodies, but consistency with bedtime and particularly the waking up time seems to be really, really important, because then it resets the sleep drive, which is when we get sleepy. Generally, we don't want to be in bed and be anxious. So if you're really having trouble falling asleep, get up, get out of bed, read, then go back to bed when you're sleepy. Don't work in bed. Bed is for sleeping and sex. That's it. And avoid caffeine, nicotine, sugar, alcohol, and screens. I know that's a big thing for lawyers, is trying to put away the screens. So. And sleep restriction, if you're really having trouble, if your sleep is all over the place, you actually can reset that nicely by sleeping less in the beginning and then extend out from that. And I'll just say medications are good for short term. They're not great for long-term use, but we won't talk too much about that. Now, Bob encouraged me to talk about alcohol. So if this is not what anybody wants to hear, you can blame Bob for this. But